Hello and welcome to the British Sitcom History Podcast. You are listening to part 2 of our look at Blackadder, Series 2. And we are already well on the way. We're looking at episode 1, that's Bells. It's the one with Bob. And we're already into the episode. We've looked at Gabriel Gleister, who plays Bob. We've talked about some of the other actors. We've still got some acts to go. We haven't talked about Miranda Richardson yet. If you haven't listened to part 1, please do go back and do that first. Otherwise, you'll feel left out. Right, let's jump back into the episode now.
Okay, so we're in the palace, we're in the throne room, and we meet our 3 new characters. And this is a nice, again, I can't believe this is not the first episode, but this is a nice introduction to these 3. It's basically they're bored. They're bored, so we just see them interacting.
Yep.
We've got Melchi, first of all, played by Stephen Fry, and he's doing an impression of Columbus, which is just him looking for stuff and listening for stuff. I'm not really... Like, when you analyse that, it's a bit odd, but I'm going with it. We've got Queenie, who is played by Miranda Richardson. And, here's a nice touch. Did you notice she was playing cup and ball?
It's just obviously the only 16th century game the writers could think of.
There are some playing cards on the floor. There's a hobby horse behind her. So she is... That's it. What it is, it's like the remnants of a child playing. That's exactly what you've got there. And then we've got Nursey, who's sat there just knitting and being quiet and looking pretty vacant. And that kind of sums up our characters. Shall we talk about the Queen first?
Queen Elizabeth. You're writing Queen Elizabeth into a sitcom. Where do you go with that? How do you do it? It's a difficult one, and one the writers struggled with as well. They had written it on the page. They'd cast Miranda Richardson, and obviously they've written it so that the character's a bit silly, childish, perhaps.
Yeah.
But apparently they were a good few days into rehearsals before they kind of figured it out. Like, Miranda Richardson was just trying different things and, like, just going back and forth, doing, like, what's the kind of the key here, what's the secret? And they kind of finally nailed it with this childish but
capricious, dangerous psychopath.
Yeah, but, like, the character is childish but also, like, having a sexual awakening, you know, I fancy you. It's very kind of just adolescence.
Yeah.
But then also the most powerful person in the country who, if you piss her off, will kill you. Like, the teenage girl, capricious nature of the teenage girl who will also has the power to, you know, behead you.
Yes.
And that seemed to be where they found the secret, and then they started writing the scripts to kind of work with that a little bit more.
I see.
And then this performance from Miranda Richardson, which is just sort of gleefully ridiculous and silly, but just kind of finds a rut there that works somehow.
It's great, isn't it? She's so good, and like Miranda Richardson's a proper actor, but she is so good in this. Like she's really funny. She delivers all her lines well, but she's not quite Begbie in Trainspotting, but she is frightening. You know, despite the fact she's like a child, she's capricious. She can kill you as soon as look at you, and you feel that there's an underlying tension which she portrays really well.
Hello, Edmund. Look. I'm sorry I snapped at you just now.
Oh.
You know I'm really very keen on you indeed, don't you?
Oh, yes, Mum, as you were keen on Essex.
Exactly.
Right up to the point at which you had his head cut off.
You didn't mind that. You knew it was only little me. And I must say his head did look jolly super on its fake.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great performance all round. And, you know, Miranda Richardson, she's got a lot more reputation as a straight actor than comedy, but she's done a fair bit of comedy in her time. And at this point, she's relatively young. She'd come up through Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, so she'd kind of started all her stuff there. And she basically made her way to London pretty quickly and on the West End and all that. She'd just the year before this done a TV movie that had kind of brought quite a bit of attention. And perhaps that just raised her profile enough that she was starting to get more screen work. And this was the result of that.
In my head, Miranda Richardson was kind of a bit too famous for this when it was on, but I'm not sure if I'm back projecting there.
That might be, that you were watching it a bit later. She definitely the 90s, early 90s were kind of a heyday. She got 2 Oscar
She was the Crying
nominations.
Game, wasn't she?
Yeah, so that's immediately after this. What's the year after this? Yeah, 2 Oscar nominations back in the early 90s. And she's won BAFTA, she's won Golden Globes, all that kind of stuff, and an Olivier nomination. Like a proper legit actor.
Well, she makes a guest appearances in the next 2 series of Blackadder. But has she done anything else? She's not done any of the sitcoms, has she?
Not really. Not in terms of like proper regular stuff. The odd little guest thing here and there. But no, not really. And yeah, perhaps not the most obvious casting. Do you know what I was thinking? And I have heard no one mention this at all in any of interviews of people talking about this, but doesn't it seem obvious to put Emma Thompson in this role?
Yes. Why isn't it Emma Thompson? What was she doing at the time? Had she already gone to Hollywood? Was she too big?
Maybe she was.
I think she was a couple of years ahead and she'd just gone too big.
But I've never even heard anyone say, obviously we wanted Emma Thompson, but she was busy. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was, like... Yeah. But it seems so obvious, doesn't it?
Has Emma Thompson actually ever played Elizabeth I?
Have a care, Mr. Shakespeare. If you do not bring a gift, Christmas custom dictates that you must give your head, be it ever a most difficult shape, to wrap.
But it does... Is Miranda Richardson the kind of... your second choice... Emma Thompson, because I don't think Emma Thompson would have brought the same energy to it. I'm sure it would have been great, right. But I think Miranda Richardson kind of just came into the room and was like, let me do something totally ridiculous here, and it works. If I can bring some historical context in, I think that this is an unfair characterization of Elizabeth I. I don't think it's even a caricature of Elizabeth I. I don't think she was like this at all, but I think her dad was. I think this is how Henry VIII was. He was this capricious psychopath who could just change his mind in an instant and turn against you. I think he was that juvenile, malevolent presence. It's interesting. So, there's bits where, Edmund becomes the chief executioner, and Queenie says something. There's lots of Catholics just begging to have their heads cut off. It's like, there's a whole kind of religious war thing that we're making a few gags about. Sure. And I'm not saying that she had clean hands in that regard, but I don't think it was capricious. I think that was a calculated plan. Yeah. That was all part of the politics of the time. Ruthless, perhaps, but not that sort of flighty. But I genuinely think, I'm not saying Henry VIII behaved exactly like this character, but I think the behaviour of Miranda Richardson's Queen is a caricature of Henry VIII. That is my historical contention. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, what about suitors? In terms of, we get a bit of Walter Raleigh and obviously Edmund is kind of in the court, and her capricious nature towards them. And she sort of falls in love and has a crush on people, but then has them beheaded. And that sort of thing. So how does that stand with the real Queen Elizabeth? Because obviously she's the Virgin Queen, but she had many a suitor. Yeah, there is some historical accuracy to that. She had favourites. And there was always, she's the Virgin Queen. There was always rumours that she'd had these relationships with people. The Earl of Essex, Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex, was probably the most famous. Yeah, there were others, but there's another point here. You're right that she's playing her as this kind of adolescent character. In reality, particularly when Sir Walter Raleigh was around, she was an old woman. She was in an old woman. She was in her 50s, which was old, 50s and 60s. So the reality is she didn't just hold the power in a majestic way, but she also held the power in terms of she was the older woman, and she was having these young people dance around paying court to her. And we kind of get that in Lord Melcher. We do. Well, Melchi, I think Melchi is the only character in this series, except Blackadder, who's not thick. Yes. He is clever and calculating, and he's gone a different way to Blackadder. He's not gone the sarcastic, cynical way. He's fawning, and he molds himself into whatever shape the Queen wants, and he does this to protect himself. But he's the only other character that is self-aware and is protecting himself. Yeah, and it's a bit of a character archetype, isn't it? You'll see, particularly in your Game of Thrones and that kind of stuff. The power behind the throne, the whisper in the ear, but constantly backstabbing and just will align with whoever is their friend that week, Well, here's something to talk about. This is one of the differences, I reckon, that you can draw quite starkly from 1 to 2. So if you think about Blackadder, Melchi, and the Queen, they're sort of rivals for her affection. In the first series, that was Blackadder, his brother, and Brian Blessed the King, right? That's the same dynamic there. Yeah. So the dynamic between Blackadder 1 and his brother, Edmund's the thick one. He's never going to outsmart his brother. He's the older brother, and he's just there in his way. He's in front of him. Whereas in this case,
it's that they're more equal. That it's a fairer battle, and I think that helps. It makes Melchi a better antagonist.
Yeah, you're right. And Melchi is essentially antagonist, but it's fairly rare that he's really like, we should get Blackadder. We should get Blackadder. No. It's kind of there in the background. We kind of come to the Queen and we understand that Melchit's been in her ear. So, like, for example, when Blackadder becomes the executioner, it's because Melchit's put him up for it, because the executioner always gets killed immediately.
Yes, so he's set it all up.
But it's always kind of played a little bit light, and like they obviously have a begrudging respect for each other as well, I think. He's the only person that Blackadder has any kind of respect for.
The truth is, Lord Melchett just can't take his ale.
Madam, I protest. I may be a little delicate this morning, but what I drank last night would have floored a rhinoceros.
If it was allergic to lemonade.
It's Blackadder here who can't take his ale. He's famous for it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That is still exciting. The boys are getting tough.
But Melchett he's positioned as the Lord Chamberlain. Now, what is that?
Well, what it is officially is the person who manages the monarch's chamber.
As in the toilet?
No, they're private apartments. So there is actually a different job called groom of the stool, which is the toilet.
Of course, yeah.
The chamberlain is the person who would be in charge of the private apartments of the king or the queen, and would therefore control access to the monarch. And so it's a really powerful position.
And would that usually be like the Queen's cousin, or some aristocracy connection? And
not necessarily. It would be an aristocrat. Yes, absolutely. It would be some. To be within the king's or the queen's chambers, you would have to have that certain amount of status. You couldn't just let any old person in there. But it was different to the Lord Chancellor as a different position, and that tended, back in that sort of era, that tended to be the person, the equivalent of Prime Minister. So, for example, Cardinal Wolsey and Thomas Cromwell under Henry VIII, they were Lord Chancellors. They were not Lord Chamberlains, because they were commoners. They were effective political operatives, but they weren't allowed in the chamber. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, it was an enormously powerful position, because if you didn't have the Lord Chamberlain's ear, you didn't have the Queen's ear, because you couldn't get anywhere near them.
And do we still have that? Is this still a real thing that people...
It is a position that still exists. It obviously became less and less political. It would be someone who was in the House of Lords, and therefore they would represent the monarch in the House of Lords.
Okay.
And they still do, but the House of Lords is irrelevant now. So as the House of Commons became more and more important, then that side of it became less and less important. But the Lord Chamberlain was in the cabinet into the 20th century. It was a position that held political power.
So there's a Lord Chamberlain now for Charlie, and what does he do? What's he organising?
The position now is more to do with managing the king's calendar of events and press releases and all that sort of thing. It's just basically like a chief private secretary. Okay. There's one thing that you probably are aware of is the Lord Chamberlain's historic role in censorship, particularly on the West End stage.
Yes.
So this goes back to, actually, about this era. The Lord Chamberlain's Men was the performing troupe that Shakespeare acted and wrote for. So the Lord Chamberlain had a role in providing entertainment for the monarch. That was part of their job. Uh-huh. But then, as theatres expanded and, more and more people went to the theatre, the Lord Chamberlain sort of held on to that role and was in charge of commissioning plays. And then that evolved in 1737, you had the Licensing Act, which basically meant, now, if you wanted to put a play on, the Lord Chamberlain didn't necessarily have to come to you and say, I want you to write a play about X. You could just freelance it and write it, but you still had to get the Lord Chamberlain's permission. And what that meant was, if it was in any way negative about the current government or the current monarch, then it wasn't going to happen. It would be censored. That lasted until 1968. So in the 60s, you had censorship, and you had plays that wanted to be staged in the West End that had maybe nudity or particularly bad language, and they were censored. They weren't allowed until 1968.
Yeah, remarkable, really. And then there's kind of a flood of there's kind of social realism stuff.
The Angry Young Men, yeah.
Angry Young Men, yeah.
Well, you had all these things happening on television already now, so it become just a complete anachronism. But it was another great reform of that Labour government of the 60s. We've talked about that before in quite a few
68,
contexts.
the same year, homosexuality was decriminalised.
Yeah, and divorce was liberalised. Yeah.
Good old days, eh?
So that's the Lord Chamberlain. That is Melchi's job.
and played by the inimitable Stephen Fry.
Yeah, so Stephen Fry, have we talked about Stephen Fry before? I don't think we have we? I don't think we've come across him. He was a guest in our episode of Chance in a Million, but I don't think we talked about him properly.
Yes, he was, and we saw he was a guest in A Thin Blue Line and all this sort of...
That's right.
But yeah, actually, when it comes to like playing a regular role in sitcoms, it's not that much on his record here. I mean, so Stephen Fry, he's a national treasure, obviously now, but I read a lot of his books back in the day and his autobiographies and stuff like that, and he was a troubled genius. He always has been. He's kind of this. He's always just been super smart, a complete kind of polymath, and just intellectual, but then troubled mentally. But perhaps because of that. And even at a young age, he was moved 2 years ahead, and he was doing his exams early and all that, but then also getting expelled from places because he was acting up. And then not putting the work in and not trying and blah, blah, blah. But even after all that, he got a free ride scholarship to Cambridge and all this.
Mm-hmm. That was after he'd been to prison, right?
Yeah, he went to prison as a young man for just stealing...
Credit card fraud.
Stole a credit card from someone, just sort of went on a bit of a bender. Because he's bipolar as well, and so he's kind of has these episodes where he's... I mean, he's now so kind of open about that. He does documentaries about mental health and stuff like that. So he seems to be more at peace with it now, or at least understands himself a little bit better.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword, this, because you're right. He is a polymath. He's a Renaissance man, and he seems to be quite good at everything, which is fantastic. But the flip side of that is, there's a quote from Hugh Laurie who was talking about his good friend Stephen Fry, and he said, Stephen speaks about 15 languages, some of them that don't even exist anymore, and yet he still doesn't know how to say no.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about, how he hasn't done that many sitcoms. Like, you could easily build or in the 80s and 90s, you could have built a sitcom around Stephen Fry, no problem, if you just could nail him down to do it. And as an actor as well, I think he has a curious talent of, take a General Melchett in Blackadder 4 particularly, massive character, but it doesn't seem silly and over the top, even though it is, but it still manages to ground it. And then something like Oscar Wilde, where he was in the film Wilde, this beautiful, subtle, dramatic acting that, rightly won him all sorts of praise.
That is such a good performance, isn't it? He's so good in that.
And it's obviously something he felt really akin to on a personal level.
But you can feel passionate about something and still not be a good actor.
Yeah. So anyway, he ends up in Cambridge, gets involved with the Footlights, obviously. That's where he meets Hugh Laurie, who, as far as I understand, is still a lifelong best friend to this day, but certainly was a working partner for many, many years. Emma Thompson, and then, like I said, Tony Slattery was in that group as well.
Kenneth Branagh?
Kenneth Branagh, yes, of course. So that class of 81 or whatever it is, the Cambridge Footlights of that year, they were just the greatest ever. These guys are going to change comedy, and then they did. They're going to go and rule the world. And so, like we said before, they got pulled into this sketch show called Al Fresco. Ben Elton was brought onto that, and so they were doing a bit of that. That ran for a couple of years. And he was a regular in Happy Families, which was a Ben Elton show that didn't do very well, but it was kind of, at that time, experimenting and trying new things. And again, like French and Saunders are in that, and all these people. So 1986 is Blackadder 2. But it's also the first series of A Bit of Fry and Laurie, which was their sketch show that ran for, 6 or 7 years?
So I was 11 then. So it's right, my teenage years starting. I loved A Bit of Fry and Laurie. Some great sketch comedy.
And Hugh Laurie, of course, he makes 2 guest appearances in Blackadder Part 2 as 2 totally different characters.
He's in Beer. He's one of the drinkers in Beer. And then in the final episode, he's Prince Ludwig the Indestructible.
Yes. Now, obviously, we'll talk about Hugh Laurie more next time we deal with Blackadder, so we'll leave that for now. But if you're thinking about what has Stephen Fry done in terms of sitcom, would you count Jeeves and Wooster as a sitcom? It's just about...
no.
But I think it has all the ingredients, really. It's, but basically, Jeeves and Wooster was, the Fry and Laurie...
It's great. Listen,
the PG
don't get me wrong, it's great. But I'm putting my foot down.
Okay. But that ran for a good few years in the early 90s. And then if you want to know, a regular lead role in a sitcom, the only one I can sort of say this is definitely a sitcom is Absolute Power.
I was going to suggest that one. Yeah.
With John Bird.
So that was him and John Bird as PR, Machiavellian PR agents.
And And that was off the back of a radio series. He was also in a show called Kingdom, which was it's a bit more comedy drama than sitcom.
Yeah,
but,
I think so.
I
never watched that, so I can't pass judgment. But yeah, I think that's more comedy drama.
And here's something I only found out about when I was actually reading up here, doing some research. Apparently, in 2016, he went off to America and he was a regular on a sitcom called The Great Indoors, which was a starring vehicle for Joel McHale off of Community.
How do you end up there?
Well, I don't know. And I'll tell you who else is in it as well as a regular. I'm sorry her name escapes me off the top of my head because I didn't write it down. But the woman who's in This Time with Alan Partridge, the female presenter alongside Alan Partridge.
Okay, I have no idea what her name is either, but I know exactly who you mean.
You know what I mean? Anyway, she's in it as the love interest of Joel McHale, but like I can't. There's nothing. She has done anything else in America, so I don't know how that happened. But
she's got a British director or writer or something.
I don't know. Yeah, but Stephen Fry's character is like the boss, and so he's in about half the episodes. But he's playing it British. He's like the posh bloke who owns the TV channel or something. I can't remember what it is. But anyway, it looked a bit crap. I only did one series, so there we go. But yeah, he went off to America to do that. The boy can't say no.
He is a national treasure, of course.
Yeah.
Are there people who don't like him? I feel like he is almost universally held in some affection.
I'll tell you who does like him. Prince Charles.
I beg your pardon?
I beg your pardon. Well, of course, now he's King Charles, which means he's got the power to give people knighthoods. So Sir Stephen Fry, as of this year, apparently. I only found that out when I was reading up on it.
I have utter disdain for the honour system, but
yes, of course, and so you should. So yeah, he is now Sir Stephen Fry officially because his mate Charles is the king now.
Well, I'm sure his mother will be very happy. Well, before we leave the throne room, we should talk about Nursey. And, we've not talked about her because she's not really doing much in this scene. And, she don't really do much at all, does she?
Well, she's there as a sort of comic relief, dare I say, but this doesn't make sense in a comedy show.
She's like Queenie's Baldrick.
Yeah, a little bit.
But my point is, the production doesn't need another Baldrick.
I think it does allow for some nice comedy bits. It's a silly character, and there are a lot of idiots in the show. But I think the important thing about Nursey is that she's the only person not afraid of the Queen. She's the mother.
That's true, but only because she's too stupid to be. One of the notes I'd written here is how has she survived? Because the Queen tells her to shut up all the time, but obviously she survived. She's not a threat. I don't know. Well,
that's because of their relationship. She's literally raised her as a mother, so it's kind of, you can push back, adolescent pushback against your parents, but there's still, there's more of a protection there.
Yeah.
But Patsy Byrne, who plays the character, relatively little known stage actor and the old small screen credits as well. She was in I Claudius. She was like in one episode of that, yeah. And we've seen her before as well because she was in the Alf Garnett saga, the film spin-off. Okay. That's the one where he does LSD. So remember, he's neighbours with John the Measurer, and John the Measurer's wife was played by Patsy Byrne.
I do remember that, yes.
So she'd been doing these odd little things, a bit of comedy here and there, not particularly a comedy specialist. So this was kind of a new thing. And it raised her profile in terms of public awareness of like, she got recognised in the street because of this, as opposed to other work. And seemed to do all right off the back of it, got some nice TV work off of it. And most specifically, right after this, she was cast in Watching. Remember Watching?
Bird Watching.
Yeah.
Yes,
he was a bird watcher, and there's the guy, he's a scouser, and there's the girlfriend. I'm not familiar with it, so I can't give you a good description. But it's classic rom-com kind of hijinks. And she plays his mother, who doesn't approve of the girlfriend and that kind of thing.
I see.
So she was a regular in that for 5 years. She had a good, nice little gig.
Well, okay, I don't like the character. I don't like Nursey at all. It kind of reminds me a little bit. Well, this is a bad comparison because I do like Father Dougal in Father Ted. She sort of just looks vacant all the time and delivers her lines into space without really engaging with the rest of the cast. I don't know. I just, like I said, we've already got a Baldrick. I don't like the character.
I think most people are well on board with Nursey.
Well, I ain't most people, mate.
Oh, all right, okay. Not afraid to court controversy.
So let's finish this scene then. So they're all a bit bored, and essentially we are learning that Blackadder is not spending any time at court anymore because he's spending a lot of time with his manservant.
Blackadder is falling in love with Bob, and he is absolutely convinced that Bob is a boy and therefore he's gay and needs some medical intervention.
Well, hang on, you're leaping over the montage.
Oh, certainly can't leap over the montage.
The montage is great. So we get like a musical montage with Blackadder and Bob sort of walking around some garden, falling in love.
Very unusual.
It's really weird, isn't it?
For several reasons. Firstly, it's location shooting. It's the only thing that's shot on location other than the end credits. They're all shot in one day in one place.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's like a musical montage, which we have nowhere else in this series. I don't think we have even the other Blackadders either. Thirdly, it's a sort of meta joke. It's shot as if it's an advert for like a compilation album of love songs.
Do you remember those adverts? That was
roughly, yeah, enough to understand the
very
parody.
Contemporary satire.
But that is not what Blackadder does. That is not the jokes that they do.
Do you know what it is, Alan? It's a little bit Young Ones.
It is a little bit anarchic, isn't it? Yes, this would absolutely fit into the Young Ones. Here's the other interesting thing as well. There are other little gags in it. Like, for example, he's walking with a falcon on his arm and then he kind of scratches his back and it's like a stuffed falcon. Again, not a Blackadder joke. That's a Young Ones joke, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is a sketch from the 9 o'clock news. What is it doing in Blackadder? It doesn't fit here at all. And they get away with it. Like, I've never watched this and gone, wow, this is weird, it doesn't fit. But if you actually think about it, it's weird and it doesn't fit. But, okay, whatever. And like I said, this is the first episode of this series. Well, it wasn't really, but, this is setting you up for something which we don't get later on. Very bizarre, very bizarre. So then we have Blackadder. He's fallen in love with Bob, or he realises he's falling in love with Bob, and enters a mild gay panic. He's worried he's becoming a little bit Earl of Doncaster, and he decides to go and see a doctor.
Dr. Leechworth.
Yeah.
So obviously the joke here is that leeches are the cure-all for everything, right?
Yes.
But like they don't half lean into it. Like every single jar in that room has got leech written on it. Like, if you're going to have leeches, fair enough. But you don't need 15 different jars of different shapes and sizes, all with the same leeches.
It's a nice little scene, and it pushes our plot further. Here's an interesting thing I noticed, though. The Doctor calls him a bender.
I see. So you've started fancying boys, then, have you?
Not boys, a boy.
Yes, well, let's not split hairs. It's all rather disgusting, and naturally you're worried.
Of course I'm worried.
Well, of course you are. It isn't every day a man wakes up to discover he's a screaming bender with no more right to live on God's clean earth than a weasel. Ashamed of yourself?
Not really, no.
Which reminds me, a couple of weeks back, when we were talking in Are You Being Served, our episode that we watched, in which they were talking about Uri Geller, and we said they didn't use the word bender and didn't make a sort of a euphemism out of that. And we asked, when did people start saying bender? Well, this is 1986.
So we're narrowing it down here. We're like the Oxford English Dictionary, trying to find the earliest sitcom incarnation of the word bender.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've already done our bit with Desmond's. We did go back and listen to that for my lexicographical musings. Anyway, so okay, the Doctor here, yes, he's curing everything with leeches, and we know that leeches were used for stuff, but how realistic is that?
Well, look, here's the funny thing. Did a little bit of research on medicinal leeches. Guess what? They sort of work. They stimulate circulation. So if you've got any kind of tissue damage, they'll stimulate circulation there. But the more important thing is they secrete, like their saliva that they secrete into you. The reason that leeches do that, it's got blood anticoagulant, so it makes you bleed a bit more, so they can drink all the blood. But it also has like quite good proteins, recombinant proteins, whatever the hell that is, which are good if you're ill. And it also, because the leech doesn't want you to know it's there, it contains an anaesthetic. So if you are going to be bled, a leech is a much better way to do it than a scalpel. But, like with all of these natural remedies that have real benefits, we've scienced the shit out of it since then. So now we've got all those proteins and different chemicals artificially produced. So we don't actually need leeches anymore. But they are still in use in some places. So here's some good stats for you. This is 1832, so 250 years after Blackadder 2. The Manchester Royal Infirmary used 50,000 leeches a year. 1832.
Wow.
Leeches accounted for 4.4% of the total hospital's expenditure. And they maintained an aquarium for leeches until the 1930s.
Good Lord.
Do you know what? I found it genuinely interesting. I thought it was like a medieval thing that would have been coming to an end around this time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's not all Blackadder tries to relieve him of this tension, because next up, thanks to Baldric's advice, he attends the Wise Woman. So modern science has failed him, so he's gone back to the dark ages of superstition.
There's a nice bit of dialogue here which sums up my earlier point, where he says, "Is this where the wise woman lives?" And the young crone says, "That it be." And he corrects her, "Yes, it is, not that it be." He's a modern man. He's a modern man stuck in this ancient world. There's some terrific face work here as well. He does a great exasperated face here.
And the wise woman basically just says, "Why don't you just sleep with him if you fancy him?" It's just a nice kind of modern thing. But obviously he has to worry about his position in court, and homosexuality is perhaps frowned upon. I suspect in the 16th century, if you had a young man in your service who serviced you, I suspect that was probably not particularly abnormal or frowned upon.
Yeah, you know what? I think homosexuality wasn't really called that then, but it was sort of frowned upon. But if the power dynamics were right, and I think you know what I mean, then I don't think it would have been career ending. Yeah,
as long as you married properly and produced a few heirs and so on.
Yeah, and when Elizabeth I died, she was succeeded by James VI of Scotland. And as far as these things can be known, he had male lovers. Mm-hmm. So contemporarily, it was a thing.
It's interesting. Whenever we're looking back at sitcoms from the past, and they're dealing with things that are culturally seen very differently now, such as homosexuality. Even in the 40 years since this was made, things have changed dramatically. So I think they handle it pretty well here. The mid-80s, being gay was kind of, the whole AIDS pandemic was going on. So people who are not kind of narrow-minded bigots were already at a point where they were, at the very least, sympathetic to the homosexual plight, if not downright accepting of it. But as we so often see when we're watching older stuff, that doesn't mean there's not jokes about it, and it's kind of how much of this is all in good fun and good humour, and that's always a bit of a delicate balance. This feels okay. I think we're definitely playing being gay as a bad thing, but
the Doctor in particular, he says a couple of things where you kind of wince a little bit, but I think the general heart of it is its heart's in the right place,
And it's interesting because you have that character, the Doctor, for example, who's quite homophobic, and it makes Blackadder himself, although he's worried about being gay, it makes him seem less homophobic because he's just kind of like, oh, this is going to be bad for my position in court, and I've never felt like this before, so what's going on? As opposed to, oh my God, this is a terrible thing.
Yeah. So now he takes the advice of the wise woman and he goes back home. Mm-hmm. And the next scene, he fires Bob as his manservant, right, and then he asks him to become his living chum.
Yeah, he tries to dismiss him, and Bob just.
So that was my question. His plan was to get rid of him, right?
Definitely, get rid of her. They just couldn't do it.
But then he couldn't do it. And then we get the big reveal. We get this. Where Bob essentially removes her, unbuttons her top, which takes ages, and we see her back, and we're focused fully on Rowan Atkinson, and he's speculating about what's going to be under there. It's Rowan Atkinson. That distills how good he is.
Yeah. And of course, what she reveals are a lovely pair of Bristols, and and then there's a comedy 2 minutes later title card, and then they're in the post-coital smoking session.
Yeah, it says 2 minutes later, so as the joke is, it only took them 2 minutes to have sex. But it didn't take them 2 minutes to have sex. It took them 2 minutes to take all of those complicated clothes off, have sex, and for some reason put them back on.
We're not animals.
Can I, before we move off, I'm talking about Rowan Atkinson's face acting. I just want to pull from one of the other episodes. You know the famous beer episode where great booze up, Edmund. Can you explain this?
Yes.
Everybody listening knows the thing I'm talking about. So he sort of thinks about it for a minute and he says, yes, I can. Great booze up. We all know the line. I just watched that and I timed it, and it's 16 seconds. 16 seconds from while he thinks about an explanation. It's amazing. That is Rowan Atkinson. That's his Oscar reel.
Gareth, if you like that, you should watch Mr. Bean. It's 25 minutes of him doing that.
I know. Why doesn't Bean work for me? It doesn't. I don't know why, because Because I really admire what he does here. I don't think is it just you taking a good thing and turned it too far up? I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, now that it is revealed that Bob is a lady, everything's fine, and they are immediately going to get married.
Yes.
He receives permission from the Queen, who is slightly capricious about it, but ultimately...
threatens to cut off her nose if it's too cute.
Yes. And Blackadder plays that correctly.
Yeah.
So let's skip forward to, we're going to have a wedding, and for some reason Baldric is the bridesmaid, because Bob can't afford friends because she was so poor.
Yeah.
And Baldric in a dress is even less convincing drag than Bob was.
True, but his little face. He's so cute. He's so proud of himself. Tony Robinson's brilliant in this scene. His little face, he's made up.
Yeah, it is very sweet, isn't it? There is a sweetness to Baldric.
It's sweet. That's exactly what it is. It's sweet.
Yeah. And, of course, this doesn't stop Percy. Worcester steps in and notices this young woman in a dress.
Yeah.
And, Percy is just an idiot. So the fact that it's someone he knows very well and is a man with a beard, he still perceives it as a woman because of the dress. And nice little bit of back and forth. They end up kissing. A lovely performance from Tim McInerney.
Come on, you little tease. You know you want to. Give us a kiss.
All right, you say so.
What an original perfume!
And then, do you see how he sort of tries to clean his mouth with? Did you see what that was?
Is it a little rabbit's foot on a stick or something?
It's a rabbit's foot on a stick, thank you. That's exactly what it is. It's a good look, I guess.
I might get one of those, I think. It's a nice little...
Hey, before we go further with this scene, can we talk about the costumes generally?
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about the outfits. Yeah, I think they're great. I mean, are they authentic? I don't know. But they look authentic. They look fantastic. The period is great.
Yeah, lots of sort of padded jackets, huge ruffs, and all that sort of thing.
Ruffs and doublets and hose. You know those sort of those things that flare out at the waist above your tights. They're called hose.
Yeah,
they're padded hose. Everybody's got those on. They're great.
I'll tell you one thing. When I was just googling a couple of images of Blackadder, and I came across basically a load of amateur dramatics companies that have done Blackadder. And I can tell you now that you do these costumes cheaply, and it looks pretty crap. So, I think actually, you know what? You're right, because you brought this up. I hadn't really thought about it, but the costumes do a lot. I think they really sell it well,
I agree.
Because we've talked about the cheap set. The costumes look on point, don't they? That's really lovely stuff.
Melchi's costume, I sort of paused it and had a look at it because I knew I was going to talk about it. And I think Melchi might have the same outfit that the BBC then used for Mark Rylance in Wolf Hall. It's like I don't know about authentic, but he looks like Mark Rylance in Wolf Hall. That's what he looks like. So it must be authentic-ish.
Mm-hmm. I tell you what, they're all dressed like they're getting their portrait done. I don't know if people sort of dressed that fancy every day. Or maybe they did. I honestly
maybe they did it. Maybe they did when they were at court.
Yeah.
My Rachel, my partner, she tells me that she once went to a party in a jumpsuit, and it was a bit of a nightmare because every time you want to go to the toilet, you basically had to strip off. How the hell does the Queen go for a wee in all of that?
Yeah, and it's not like there's a nice private chamber. There's probably just a pot somewhere.
Groom of the stool, all day.
Yeah. So, over the next couple of scenes, we get quite a lot of mileage out of Blackadder essentially teasing Percy about not being the best man.
Oh, there's a lot of best man business, which is quite nice.
It works. They really drag it out, but they get away with it. But
I think they do.
Really, what happens is that he's asked his best friend from school, Lord Flashheart, to be the best man. Now... We haven't even mentioned Rik Mayall yet, and we're going to have to deal with this because you, Gareth, you are a hater on Rik Mayall, aren't you?
No, that's too strong. No, it's not. My point about Rik Mayall is that, I think he's great in The Young Ones, and he's great in Bottom because he is playing that zany character.
The show is built around that style.
Yeah. But when you've got a character-based sitcom like this, throwing Rik Mayall into it, like literally throwing a bomb into the corridor, it derails the show. It derails the drama, and it takes me out of it because he's not Lord Flashheart. It's Rik Mayall in period outfit.
Well, I disagree. This is a hell of a performance here, right? Flashheart comes in right at the very end of the show, and I timed it. Rik Mayall is on screen for exactly 2 minutes and 40 seconds.
Uh-huh.
Basically the last 2 minutes and 40 seconds of the show. And he completely derails it. And like we talked about with the musical montage scene earlier, like he has no business being, like the way he's performing is totally different. He's looking directly down the camera. His moustache is falling off.
Yeah. I quite like that bit. But go on, carry on.
It shouldn't work, but it does. It works. It's very funny. Although it feels like it shouldn't kind of connect with what we're doing, it brings our plot to a close and it all kind of makes sense. He's just gone so super big with it. It's funny. What more do you need?
When we've talked about Rik Mayall before, I've sort of prefaced everything by saying, look, I know people love him and it's personal taste. I accept all of that. And if you love Rik Mayall, then great, Rik Mayall's here. But if you find him a little bit intrusive, then, Rik Mayall's here. And that's my position.
Love it or like it or whatever, it's a hell of a performance. And obviously everyone remembers Flashheart.
It is dynamic.
And apparently he rewrote a lot of it himself. He added loads.
Oh, you don't say.
Much to the right.
She's got a tongue like an electric eel. You're telling me that wasn't on the page?
That's a great line.
She's got a tongue like an electric eel and she likes the taste of a man's tonsils.
And I'm pretty sure I've used that 3 or 4 times in my life. And probably ruined 3 or 4 potential relationships because of it.
Excellent.
Because nobody gets it when I say it.
That's because you got it with people who are too young.
But yeah, I mean, what an appearance. 2 minutes, 40 seconds of complete anarchic nonsense. And that is what Ben Elton brings to the show. And that is... Because Rik Mayall's there because of Ben Elton. Although, having said that, he does appear in the first series in a brief role.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Ben Elton and Rik Mayall were really good mates and worked together a lot. And it was written that for him. So let me ask you a question then, because Flashheart reappears in Series 4. Now, obviously, we're not dealing with that directly, but in that episode that Flashheart appears in Series 4, he's in for a much more prolonged period of time. He's out throughout the episode, and it's just token down about 15%. He's not looking at camera. He's not breaking the world, albeit he is still a big character. Does that sit better with you? Is that enough of a kind of pullback?
It absolutely does. I think it's still a Rik Mayall performance, but it doesn't break the boundaries of the world.
But I think that's a 3-year difference, and I think that's a difference of, like we said with that musical montage sequence, have they quite figured out what they're doing? Are we still doing a bit of that Not the 9 o'clock news feel? Are we still doing a bit of that Young Ones anarchic reference? Whereas 3 years later... they'd settled into something a little bit more. They knew what they were doing. Rik Mayall perhaps had just settled a bit more as well. He kind of knows that this isn't the show where you come and look down the camera lens. Although, having said that, Gabrielle Glaister does it early on as Bob as well.
She does.
She looks straight down the camera, and not as a kind of bad actor. It's a deliberate thing.
It's not like Wendy Richard looking at the camera all the time. It's a deliberate breaking the fourth wall.
And we don't get that even in other episodes of this series, so I don't know why they do it. Anyway, also we get Flashheart throws Percy through a door that appears to be made of styrofoam that doesn't break in quite the way it was supposed to, but there we go. You only get one go at it.
Yeah. And his moustache. I did like the fact that his moustache is falling off. That really made me laugh. And I do really enjoy the punchline to the whole show, which is, Flashheart steals Bob, runs off with her, and Melchett says,
"It is customary on these occasions for the groom to marry the bridesmaid. I presume you intend to honour this?"
I do.
And that's a great punchline to the episode.
It's a lovely ending, yeah. So, let's have a quick word about the end credits before we go off the episode.
Yeah, so filmed on the same day as this montage. I'd already thought that before you said it, yeah. Must have been one day with the cameras out there.
Did it, yeah. So, the end credits are different every time in terms of the lyrics. They're tied into the episode that we've just seen. It's sung like a kind of this high-pitched minstrel kind of thing. And there is a sort of story within the end credits as well, because every time, Blackadder's chasing him around, and then at the end he finally catches him and that kind of thing. So that's a nice little touch. Just these different lyrics. I presume that was written by Howard Goodall. The lyrics, even I don't actually know. But
I tell you what, I wondered when is that after the thing had been? Did he just have the script, or after the thing had been edited? Like, when does he get to see the story?
Well, I can tell you for sure that the location filming was filmed before any studio stuff. So yes, it must have been filmed before.
Just from the scripts.
However, we don't really see kind of a lip syncing of the person singing the song. So I guess you could change it later if you really
that's
need
true.
to.
Is that Howard Goodall singing?
Some flash or Twitchley had his beard. From now he always shall be single. To fall in love with boys is weird, especially boys without a dingle. Blackadder.
No, it was
Who's the voice? I was wondering if we knew that.
No, I did look it up, but it was a singer. It was just a singer they brought in to do it who could do that particular high-pitched style. But it wasn't anyone I knew from anything, so...
Fair enough.
We will continue to chart the evolution of Blackadder. But for now, have we dealt with Blackadder 2? Have we covered our bases there?
I think we have. Listen, as I said, I've watched this 100 times, so... In contrast to our last episode, No Job for a Lady, which I was watching for the first time, I was a bit worried that we wouldn't have anything to say about this. But the big worry when you get a series like this from your childhood is that you're going to watch it again and it's not going to hold up. But even when you start to scrutinise it and start to look at the wobbly sets and the costumes, it does. It's great. It's fantastic. It's really, really good.
Of course, one thing we haven't addressed is something we've talked about before. This being set in a historical time period means it's not set in the 80s, and so it doesn't age in the same way that a lot of things do. So it feels like, and in terms of the comedy, it feels fresh. It could have been made yesterday and it would work on the same levels that it does now, that it did then. So I think that's partly why Blackadder has stood the test of time, but also it's just fantastic. It's a culmination of some really great comedic minds working together. And like listening to interviews with people, reading Tony Robinson's book and stuff, one big massive ingredient of it was that it got on so well and they clicked. They're all still friends now. They could hang out together and work together, and it was a joy even when it was difficult. That can lead to complacency and just having a good time with your mates and not necessarily creating a good product. But they're all sticklers, they're all professionals and like comedy purists. So,
have you seen the film This Is the End?
Exactly.
Well, I think we've wrung the juice out of Blackadder 2. That's great. I've really enjoyed watching it again. I've enjoyed talking about it. I hope our listeners have enjoyed hearing us talk about it. Thanks, everyone. We're going to move forward about 10 years to Hippies next. We're going to be looking at that, another period sitcom, because it was set in the 60s, wasn't it?
But a fascinating time capsule of the late 90s and some great comedic talents who are kind of on the way up. You know, Simon Pegg as the lead and Sally Phillips. And, but that's, I'm really looking forward to getting into the kind of the background of that show. More than the show itself.
Well, that's coming soon. That'll be with you next week. But thank you for enjoying Blackadder 2 with us. And of course, if you want to follow us on social media, we're on Facebook, just to search for the British Sitcom History Podcast. Or if you go on Instagram, you can see us at BritComPod.
Yeah, excellent stuff. We will, of course, return to Blackadder, I think, at least 3 more times in the future, because there's 2 more series, plus a bit of extra stuff as well. So, that'll come up in the future years, I'm sure. But for now, thank you so much for listening, and goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye!